Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and we got big, big stuff to talk about this week. I thought it was just gonna be, typical expansion this, expansion that, but it got pretty major this week.
Yeah. This week, the 110 challenge is officially completed.
hmm
And there were so many people who said it could never be done, and there were so many of us who valiantly tried. And Ratsma got very close, Hafu got very close, but even the top players couldn't pull it off. Until now, And who is it, you may ask? Who is it that cracked the 110 challenge? Who is the most amazing arena player this week, at least?
It is not an arena player. That's
It is
basically it.
not an arena player at
But
all.
congratulations to Two Beers. He has been streaming for a while. You may have heard of him. He has entered in some constructed tournaments. I know that before this 110 challenge, I've heard of Two Beers in some constructed tournament settings previously. So he's not an unknown, definitely.
I mean, this is the most amazing story. TwoBiers is a German tournament constructive player. He's, placed like second in large tournaments. He's a known constructive player. Twitch partner. He streams, and he was just streaming his constructed stuff. And he put it to a chat. He said, "Hey, do you want me to play arena?" What he said on stream was that he had like 2,000 arena wins or something, so he definitely like knows his way around the arena. But the vast majority of that happened in classic, and he's been like a very infrequent arena player since then. But chat was like, "Hey, we want to see you play arena," and by a vote of 52% to 48%, Two Beers started the 110 challenge.
Yeah.
And he played, and he quickly got to like some. It was like, I think his first 5 runs were like 12 wins, 11 wins, 12 wins, 11 wins, 12 wins. And it instantly became a thing on Reddit. And then everybody started watching him. We were hosting him. Hafu was hosting him. He had like more than 10K viewers as we all watched him get his final run. And here it is, the 110 challenge, as first issued by Amaz back in December, finally completed by at least to me, like obviously an actual Hearthstone player, but a fairly random person on the arena scene.
Right. And we've talked about sort of the logistics of the 110 challenge before,
Mhm.
right? And sort of like who stands a good chance. And obviously, you have your main suspects. You have your Hafus and your Ratsmas, and those are the people in which were not only going for it, but had a good chance because of their experience and because of their skill.
Mhm.
But if you really think about it, and I think I've said it in other Light Forges as well, and I'm like, well, if anyone were to do it, you obviously suspect those people, but there are
Mhm.
tons of other people out there as well, right? It's
Yep.
like logistically, if there's a lottery system going on and there's like a millionaire who buys up like millions and millions of tickets, they are still not favored to win it,
Right.
right? Um,
Right.
someone
So,
out
so in
there.
this case, Hafu and Ratsma are the millionaires, and Two Beers is the working class folk who spends a portion of his paycheck on the lottery ticket.
There you go.
But no,
And
it's not a lottery. Like,
no, obviously.
we were watching Two Beers play, very good player, and he was so much pressure on him. Can you imagine? I don't know what his normal stream size
I
is,
can't imagine. I really can't.
but at that point, you could tell, right? Like you could tell the pressure was getting to him at certain points, and he took like long breaks between each games as he should, streaming on a 5 minute delay. He came back at one point and was like, "Hey, I gotta stop the stream, guys. My mom says it's too loud, and I just we'll pick this up the next time." This is in the middle of his final run. Totally trolled everybody. It was wonderful. Like 1,000 people left, and the rest of us gained so much respect for him.
Yeah, it was pretty great. It was just a very entertaining stream. And I think at the end, after he did it, everyone was happy, but I think everyone also let out a collective sigh, right? It's like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
it's over. Like this thing is over. And everyone was so happy. Like the magnitude of this challenge,
It's
it got way
insane.
bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, and
It got He
like
had
just
Twitch staff watching. He had congratulations from the Hearthstone devs themselves.
yeah.
It was absolutely
And
crazy.
he deserves it. That was the average 10 wins per run on a
Mhm.
streak of 10 runs. And this is a guy who's attempted the 110 challenge once before and didn't get very far.
Right, right.
The entire time he was like picking, he's like, okay, oh, so here's one of the things. So you need a lot of luck in the run, right? You need to be
Oh,
good, you
of
need a lot of
course.
luck, you
Yeah.
need a lot of things. And one of his luckiest things is actually before the games even started, he did not have to pick warrior or priest. And he does not know how to play. According to him, he does not know how to play warrior or priest or druid in the arena at all. He just like hasn't done it in so long. And sure enough, his druid run went 3 wins. And he
Yeah.
still was able to recover from that. But because of the way the selections worked, he was never offered warrior or priest after he had selected his other classes. So he did not have to play those two classes. Now, warrior, if you still Oh, one other thing that happened on the same day that TwoBiers broke the 110 challenge, I published my LOE arena tier list, class tier list, finally, which is clearly the far less big of the two news. But, but it is there now on HearthstonePlayers.com. If you just type into Google Hearthstone Arena class tier list or like Arena class tier list, it'll pop up. And we did it first for TGT, but and I was going to update it for LOE in like January, and I was like almost done, and I just never finished it. But now I have, and we ranked Warrior as 5th, and I think reasonably, if you're a little softer on Warrior, maybe like 6th. But he wasn't very good with Warrior, and it's true. It's a very unique class to play. If you haven't played it, you're not going to be very good with it. So he was trying to dodge that. And Priest, of course, is ranked at the dead last. So he avoided those two, which was a big help. And he instead was able to pick Rogue 3 times and Mage twice.
Yeah. And look, with this challenge, you need some luck, right? And the way I like to think about it is the winner in any big sort of multi-table poker tournament, right? If you go back and look at all of their hands,
Oh yeah.
you're bound to see at least a handful of times in which that person had to hit their outs
Yep.
or like their pocket aces versus pocket kings or something like that, right?
So he really came in with like a larger disadvantage than
He did.
than any of us would. Even if he's otherwise similarly skilled, he came in being like, well, I have 3 classes that I really haven't played much with in the last like year. Like
Right.
definitely not in the OE meta.
Yeah, and he was lucky enough to avoid them, but skillful enough to absolutely dominate the classes that he did get. So big congratulations to TwoBiers, and it's pretty crazy. I have to admit, I was one of those people who didn't think it was possible, just because of how hard it was, and also because of stream sniping.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yep. But hey, you put on a 5-minute delay. I think it's pretty hard to stream snipe. There was one kind of like vaguely suspicious. Like his first match of the last run was against this ridiculously insane paladin deck. It's like muster, Godhammer, blah blah blah. Like 3 Keeper of Oldemons or something, and you're like, oh my god, are the stream snipers in force? But then he didn't meet another like terribly awful deck after that.
Yeah,
so.
and that might have been some luck there as well. But people make a good point. People were commenting afterwards that it was really smart for him to build up the hype, and then within like 10 hours, I think
he went to bed in order to rest, and then he woke up and started streaming again immediately.
Right. And people were saying that the reason people like Ratsma and Hafu's runs might have been sabotage or stream snipe was because they spent a little bit more time because they needed rest, and then people could build up decks to sort of
to snipe them at higher.
Yeah, to snipe them at higher
wins.
wins. Yeah. Yes,
that's fair.
So,
I mean, also Ratsma didn't stream with a delay in his last run, which because he was the first one who got there, so it wasn't like a thing that it was very obvious that everyone should do.
Right.
But hey, congratulations to TwoBiers. The 110 challenge has been completed once and just once. Definitely, there are people still going for the 110, or then now I think did he get like 102 or 103?
He got 103.
He got 103. Okay, so now it's like the 104 and 10 challenge or whatever, right? It'll go on, but definitely huge congratulations to TwoBiers for doing it. And we hope TwoBiers keeps playing Arena in the future now that he has some Arena fame and expertise.
Yeah, definitely.
It's gotta be weird, right? Like if you're like a tournament player in Germany and you barely stream Arena and you have a stream going, you've been doing this for a while, you've been building up your your base and whatever, and then some random time when you decide to play the Arena, all of a sudden everything explodes around you.
Yeah.
It's life, and it is the Arena. It is very, very representative of the Arena and the draw that Arena has, right? Like everyone's on an even playing field when it comes to the cards, and then you go as far as your deck, your skill, and your luck takes you every time. And each run can have a drastically different result, no matter who you are. And in his case, 10 runs in a row can go very well and suit his skill set and his experience, and it's an amazing story.
Yep. And
Like, not that I would have been disappointed if like Hafu finished it, but like this is better. I think this is better.
you have the underdog. This is
I do.
You're right, right, and this also kind of reinforces the anyone can win mentality of Hearthstone, which Blizzard loves, right? They want they want it to be like poker, skillful, but anyone can have their story, anyone can win it. Although
And it's also not like a totally random person, right? That would have been like I think that would have been worse if like literally just someone who is like halfway decent at the game, if that, like, does it and actually pulls it off. That would be like, oh, this is all RNG. But this guy like actually knows what he's doing.
yeah,
And is a Hearthstone tournament player, legit ranked on whatever. Anyway, we wish TwoBiers the best of luck going forward. And hey, if you're thinking about streaming the Arena and you're a good Arena player, it's a great time to stream, right? Like between all these people getting recognition, the fact that there's like a spreadsheet now being kept. So as long as you're good, even if no one watches you, you'll at least have something to like strive for. And just it's opening up, right? I hate barriers of entry to anything, and everything opening up is definitely all very positive development.
yeah. Look, we'll watch after this. We never see TwoBiers play Arena ever again.
I'm gonna go on his stream then and donate some more money and be like, stream Arena, we need you. Okay, so let's go on to the next really exciting news. N'Zoth. Did I get that right?
I have no idea, dude. And we're gonna go an entire Lightforge with this pronunciation. So I think it's N'Zoth.
N'Zoth? N'Zoth?
Yeah,
N'Zoth. Okay, we're gonna call him N'Zoth.
N'Zoth.
I'm sure it's not pronounced N'Zoth, but we are going to go with that pronunciation. He is a old god, if you're wondering who N'Zoth is. And if you're watching this on stream or on YouTube, I'm going to put him up. And if you are not watching, I will describe to you the card that he is. So N'Zoth is a old god, legendary, 10 mana, and he is nicknamed the Corruptor. Okay, chat is correcting me. It's N'Zoth. N'Zoth.
It's pretty good. Let's go with that.
So let's go with N'Zoth, the Corruptor. And he is a 5/7 card for 10 mana, and his battle cry is summon your Death Rattle minions that died this game.
Pretty good.
So all your Death Rattle minions that die the game get resummoned. This is like massive Kel'Thuzad levels of insanity without needing the board.
Right.
Just needing to have been there at some point in the game. Which, by the time you have 10 mana, right, like, it's happened.
Yeah, definitely. So this is the first old god card that we'll actually see in the Arena, because Cthulhu is gone. And obviously, if you've been following, you know that Cthulhu, as well as all of the Cthulhu buff or Cthulhu oriented cards, will not be within the Arena. And we have 4 old gods that are coming out within this expansion. So N'Zoth is going to be the first one that we actually see in the Arena, and you can see it has major implications. Death Rattle minions are really strong in the Arena. That's why Museum Curator is actually a very good card, right?
Yeah. Although he won't get summoned by N'Zoth. Whatever he summons, if you play it, will. Okay, so that's N'Zoth. We're not going to see him that much in the Arena, but it means there's a theme, right? Cthulhu has a theme of things buffing Cthulhu. N'Zoth has a theme of Death Rattles, I guess, which is cool. Right. I hope the other 2 gods have more interesting themes than we will replace Nax. in constructed now that standard's coming out and Nax is going out. Watch, the other one is We Are Mechs because GVG is going away. But as long as one of the old gods has a really interesting new mechanic, even if it's not a keyword. Blizzard has also announced, by the way, much to my disappointment, that there's not going to be in Whispers of the Old Gods any new mechanic with a keyword. So that doesn't mean you don't get things like the Forbidden cards, right, which are essentially a new mechanic for all intents and purposes. But it's just written out with words rather than with an actual tag, right? Like Joust is not a new mechanic. Joust.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
So hopefully there's one of the old gods that represents something new. But for now we have Death Rattle, which is cool. And let's go over the N'Zoth cards. Like I said, we're not going to go over all the cards from here on out. There's just too many cards, and the reveal pace is picking up definitely. So I'll be making a video that will be released sometime next week where I review all the cards that have been released so far. And, we do what we did in TGT, if you were following us back then. We put them in themes. We, talk about game design, all the good stuff. And I can really dig into it. But for now, let's look at some of the N'Zoth cards. Where do you want to start?
Let's go with the Tentacle.
Let's go with the Tentacle. The Brood of N'Zoth.
Oh, I was thinking Tentacle of N'Zoth, but,
Tentacle of N'Zoth. Sorry, I'm just being speciesist. All things with tentacles are the same to me. So here's a common neutral card in the arena, which means it will be in the arena. And we can think of it as Mini Sheep. It is 1 mana for a 1/1, and it has a Death Rattle that deals 1 damage to all minions. It is like a sheep, except it deals 1 damage instead of 2 damage.
Yeah, so my immediate thought about this is, well, sheep is sort of leaving constructed, right? And they could
not just sheep. Death's Bite is leaving arena. It's leaving constructed.
Yeah. Death's Bite is leaving, and also sheep is leaving. So you have all of these small AoEs, right, that are leaving. And then in terms of small AoEs, if you're thinking neutral, you're sort of just left with Wild Pyro, right? And Wild Pyro, you don't have to go into it that much, but you obviously need different activators, and the dynamic is a little bit different. And they can't just print another sheep. It's like a non-mech sheep, right? So they obviously wanted something a little bit different.
You just wait.
that is true. I haven't seen anything. And for this, I'm kind of disappointed. I'm just like, man, the impact is really small, right? Because you would gladly pay 1 more mana to get that extra damage, and the stats don't increase, but nothing about the sheep is about the stats. And a lot of times you actually just want the body to be a 1/1, so you can, if you're a mage, you can ping the sheep, or if you're another class, you can do something to it to have it die easier, right? So this is significantly weaker. Now look, there could be opportunities where you need the curve consideration, and all you really need is that 1 damage. But the sheep being 1 more mana for 1 more damage is so huge, because typically you need to pay almost 2 mana to get that 1 more damage AoE there. So this is, it sort of fills a gap in there, but value wise, the sheep is just better if you want a sheep.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it from the point of view where you don't want a sheep. You rarely want a sheep. Yeah, you play with sheep in the arena. You're not terribly happy most of the time. You're just kind of like, when can I possibly squeeze this in and get some value, right? It's not a very highly rated card. It's better in Mage, of course, and this card will, of course, by the same token, be less good in Mage than the sheep. But as a 1-drop, this is effectively a 2/1 at worst. It could be better than a 2/1, and if it could be hero power down as well, just the same as a 2/1, and it wouldn't make a difference. Its downside is that if you play another minion and then this gets hit, it kills that. But otherwise, it's kind of like a 2/1 on turn 1, which is fine. You can play it later on in the game to just do 1 damage to everything if you need to. You can use it to trigger a lot of the warrior stuff, which is always really nice. And so I don't think that it's terrible of a card, but it's definitely it's like a sheep. It's around where a sheep is.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's go back to the card I wanted to talk about. This is an adorable card. Unfortunately, it's in, I don't know, German, or I don't know, some other language that we have shown on here. But what it is it's a 3 mana 2/2. It is called the Brood of Nazoth, and it has a death rattle, which is to give all of your minions +1/+1. This is also a neutral common.
Hmm. So this suffers from the Anubiseth Sentinel um, problem, right? In which, like when Anubiseth Sentinel came out, it some people thought it was good, some people thought it was bad, but
No one thought it was good.
oh, okay, some people thought it was going to be better than what it is right
Yes,
now, which
yes,
is
that's fair.
and this suffers from the same problem. And I think most people see it now that they've played with the Anubisat Sentinel. Whenever you give your opponent the ability to control where and when it triggers, that's just not good,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And
It means it doesn't trigger.
it means it doesn't trigger a lot of the times. And on just like on turn 5, how 4/4 is understated, like this thing is understated for a 3-drop as well, right?
Yep.
Now, look, it has more flexibility than Anubis Sentinel. Sometimes you prefer this than the other one, but a lot of the times as well, like you're not going to have that many minions on the board, so you prefer the huge +3/+3 from the Anubis Sentinel, and over here it's just +1/+1. So sometimes you're just getting like a +1/+1 a minion, but you don't get the initiative on their turn. So it's a delayed +1/+1. So if you just do all the math associated with this card, you're like, wow, this is pretty bad here.
This is awful.
Yeah.
Like, don't even sugarcoat. This is not like a Nubiseth, except in the fact that it looks like it's a Nubiseth. It's really a lot worse than a Nubiseth.
Yeah, it is.
A Nubiseth gives +3/+3 and has 2/2 more stats. Getting 2/2 more stats than this puts it at 5 mana, so it's about the same. But instead of giving something +3/+3, it gives +1/+1. So you need to have a trigger on 3 things for it to get the same value as a Nubiseth. On 3 other things. That means your board has to have 4 minions and this thing has to die first. That will never happen. If that is happening, you've already won before that, because it can't die on the turn if it gets put out, or you have to do weird things to kill yourself or something. So it's just plain awful. It's going to trigger on nothing, as Anubiseth usually does, or it'll trigger on one thing at best, which means that you have gotten 3 mana stats of 3/3, one of which was delayed, everything was conditional. Like, this is an incredibly awful card for the arena.
Yeah, and you're going to see this theme because it won't be the last time. I think you're going to see Death Rattle buffs. Death Rattle leaving behind minions, or Death Rattle sort of like casting an immediate effect, like a guaranteed effect, right? Like with the Toad, even though they can control it, you're still getting that 1 damage, right? Over here, there is a good possibility, as with the Anubiseth, that just nothing happens. At the end of the day, if they trade correctly, you basically just played a 3 mana 2/2, and that feels terrible.
Yep. It is an awful, awful, awful card. And I think, like I said, right, like Merps was saying before, some people thought Nubiseth was going to be okay. Others thought it was going to be awful, like bad. We thought it was going to be bad. We were right about that. I think this is going to be awful. Like, so bad. We're talking not like raid leader levels of bad, but like Dalaran mage levels of bad.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of unplayable that this card is.
Right.
So, okay. Now let's get on to a happier note, which is the Nazoth's First Mate, which is the only class card from Nazoth so far. And this is a wonderful card. You've probably heard about it already, because it made some waves when it first was released. It is a warrior common card. It is a 1 mana 1/1, and it's a pirate, and hence First Mate, and it has a battle cry that says, equip a 1/3 rusty hook. That is amazing.
So ridiculous. Like, I can't. I'm very happy that they're giving warriors this, and this just opens everything up. Think about how good Light's Justice is for Paladin, and not just a weapon that you get from Muster, which is obviously very good. Light's Justice itself, which is a 1/4 weapon for Paladins, and it is significantly above average. You know, that's where we rank it. And I think if you ask other arena players, like, they recognize how good that ping is with a class that, you know, can't ping, right? And it creates guys, but those guys have no initiative. And this is even better. Like, would you sacrifice an extra charge to get a 1/1 on the board that turn? Absolutely. Yes. That is huge. You get a small amount of board presence, and you get a 1/3. This is about as powerful as a one drop can possibly get without you just being like, there's no way, right?
Yeah, before you just like, hey Blizzard, you broke the game.
Right.
And it's a pirate, and warriors love pirates, so
Yeah.
it even has extra synergy with that. Like it's just an amazing card, and it's a common warrior card. Hashtag Arena Warriors matter. Yeah, Blizzard still has the Blizzard definitely took notice of the warriors down like inherent downsides in the arena. So there's definitely I think some kind of effort to make sure at least some of the commons in each expansion for warrior are just like flat out borderline overpowered cards. And it's necessary, right? Like, I don't think you'll ever print enough warrior cards to make it the best class in the arena, but it's going to keep it afloat because without these cards, warrior's not going anywhere. Warrior in the arena would be pretty bad. So this is good. And one of the things that warriors needed too in the arena is a weapon. Because they haven't been printing weapons. Ogre, Warmaul doesn't count. There hasn't been any common weapons besides Death Spite that has been printed since Classic. So it's good to get a weapon. It's very good to get a weapon. I will say one thing though, as it's not quite a Light's Justice. Paladins usually don't have that many weapons, so you can really just hold on to the Light's Justice and get all 4 charges to do something. With the warrior, you're gonna use these 3 charges almost like they're cursed blades. Like you're gonna start just throwing them at things. So it's a little less. Like this card would not be in a paladin deck. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Right. And what you really want to look at is sort of the beauty of the design and how Blizzard looks at the interaction with just the class itself and other strong cards. Like if you look at Goblin Auto Barber when it first came out, right? You're like, this is so freaking powerful.
Yep.
You can see that they strategically made it into a 2 drop, right? They didn't
Yep.
make it into like a normally stat in like 3 drop that might have been the same power level, added a little bit more attack or something like that. They wanted to make it awkward. So you either needed to like coin dagger and then put it out there, but then there's counters to that, or you have to, do funky stuff with your curve. It requires you to have a 1 drop in there, right?
Yep.
So same thing with N'Zoth's first mate. You put it out on 1, and what's on turn 2, Fiery War Axe, right? They know that it kind of clashes with some of your other early power cards, and that's
Yep.
sort of what you have to give up. Like, okay, you can't play your Fiery War Axe that sometimes just goes 2 for 1 on turn 2 and turn 3. You're going to stick with this weapon, perhaps, and then you're going to have to play more honestly, or maybe you do want to like play the Fiery War Axe, but it does present you with a choice there, right? It's not like the first good weapon that the warrior has is like on turn 3, and then this is on turn 1, so you get to use up all of your charges and then equip the other weapon. It doesn't make it so easy for you. You have to give up a little bit of opportunity cost there.
Yep. Yep. It's a very well designed card.
Yep.
I love it. It's powerful. And it's one of those things that's way more powerful in Arena than in Ranked because of exactly what you're saying, right? Like in Ranked, everyone's going to have 2 Fiery War Axes. But, in Ranked, you also get more Pirate synergy. Oh, man. I'm going to start playing Ranked again. Pirate Warrior. Pirate Warrior is making a comeback. Pirate Weapon, Pirate Face Warrior. Comeback time. Okay,
Right.
So our new Lightforge policy with the our Lightforge policy with the Whispers of the Old God generally is that we are not going to do every card. We are just going to pick some. So N'Zoth was kind of important. That was the big reveal this week, and we'll do that with the other gods as they're released. But other than that, we're not touching all the cards. If you want a review for all the cards, check out our YouTube. Sometime this week, I'm going to be putting out the first video, and we will keep going after that. Hopefully, we'll be able to put out a weekly video, and then we can comment on it on the Lightforge, just so we can cover all the cards. But for now, I'm going to let Merps pick 2 cards that he wants to talk about that was released this week.
Awesome. Yeah. So one card I think will actually have some implications for the arena, and the other one I just wanted to talk about because it's fun. I'll talk about the actual serious one first. I want to talk about Undercity Huckster. And I think that design-wise, well, first of all, I'll explain the card. It is a rare rogue card, 2 mana, 2/2, with a death rattle. Add a random class card to your hand from your opponent's class. So
Burgle.
yeah. Yeah. So this is sort of the like if you look at it, well, some people might think of it as like, oh, it's sort of like an anti-cut purse, right? Both 2 mana, 2/2s, both rares, except while cut purse is trying to get you tempo, this is trying to get you cards.
That's a weird way to look at it, man.
It is weird,
I
but
don't
it's
know
more
who's
of the
looking at
stat
it that way
distribution.
except for you, but go
Yeah.
on.
But here's the thing, and I think Blizzard's been trying to do this for a little while.
Uh-huh.
They recognize that rogues, it's like we made rogues a little bit too fast in GVG, right? Like GVG
Okay.
just made rogues a little bit too fast with all their power cards, and we need to try to slow them down a little bit, but also give them this sort of like very unique rogue-esque style, right?
Mm,
And I don't know if they're doing that anymore. It's like they seem to be focusing on this like control rogue, this like card draw. We've
hmm
seen Burgle, and now we see Undercity Huckster. And we saw
And to
like
be
Tombstone
fair,
Control.
rogues draw a lot of cards. That's
They do.
always been one of their things. It's a weird class to think of as like a card draw class, but they have Sprint, the most card draw card in the game, flat out. They have a Shiv, which cycles and draws a card. They've added Burgle at a certain point. Like they're a pretty card drawing kind of class. It's one of their
They have
things.
some card draw, but their card draw has been very, I guess, like unique. It's burst card draw, which kind of, I guess, fits in with the class of like they have burst damage and they have burst card draw, right?
Rogues are extreme, man. Extreme this, extreme that.
Exactly. So this sort of goes, I think, with Wizards' philosophy of like, okay, we're not going to give them like Buccaneer along with Undercity Valiant anymore.
Mm,
Like not just like those two cards and give them a bonus there. So I think this card is pretty good with playing that like mid-range control style, and you run into sort of the problem of like, well, you're going to anti-tempo yourself, right? And then you have to walk that fine line between I have a lot of other cards that give me tempo, for example, Undercity Valiant or Goblin Auto Barber, and then you can sort of mix this in to get other class cards. And class cards are usually really, really good. And a lot of times, the worst class cards, if you're just picking a random class, is Rogue because they have a lot of weapon buffs, right? Well,
hmm
if you're facing Rogue, you could use those. So it's actually very rare that you will get a class card that'll be bad for you because you should be able to take advantage of sort of all class cards there.
Yep. I want to make the probably more apt, I want to say, comparison that people are thinking about, which is with Loot Hoarder. Um, both are 2 mana cards that are smaller than their usual size, and both give you a card when they die with the death rattle. So that's how I look at the card. It has one more defense, one more health, which means you can't ping it down.
Which is
But in
important. Yeah.
exchange, yeah, that's very important because one of the problems with Loot Hoarder is late in the game, right, or even early in the game, they just use their ping, and then you done nothing to increase your presence on the board. And you can't do that with the Undercity Huckster, which is very nice. But rather than get a card from your deck, which you have selected from 3 random cards already that are good, you are getting a random card from your opponent's class, which is going to be, generally speaking, a lower quality card. So that's kind of the trade off there.
Yeah.
And I like that trade off. I like that trade off. I'll take the randomness of potentially getting a bad card because that 1 health is so important. It's really the only thing missing from Loot Hoarder being a ridiculously amazing card rather than just an above average one. And so I think Undercity Huckster is going to be a good card.
It's going to be a good card. I don't think it's going to be a card that you always pick, right? And this is
Oh,
something.
yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it'll be like a super premium card there, not just because of the tempo loss, but also because I think people, especially in the arena, are thinking like, "Oh man, class cards are really good, right?" And they are, but you don't get to pick this
Yeah.
class card. And I think everyone's really used to sort of the inspire mechanic and sort of being like, "Oh man, these that card draw is really good." And part of the reason why, like, Tomb Spider is good or Jeweled Scarab is good is because you get to pick whichever card you want.
You
And
mean Discover mechanic.
yes, sorry, the Discover mechanic, you
I
get to
was
pick
like, what
whichever
is the
card you want.
Inspire mechanic
And
drawing?
with Loot Hoarder, you get to randomly draw a card that you have already picked, right? You have already selected. But for this one, there's no selection process. There's no filter at all. You just get a card. So it's the trade-off of a worse card because you're not being able to select it versus the 1 health. And then I think it follows your evaluation perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you have to think about what classes you're facing too, right? It's going to be Paladin and Mage. Pretty good class cards. It's not like you're facing Warlocks, in which case you're going to be very sad.
Yep.
All right, I'll do one, and then we'll go back to yours for your last card pick to discuss. I want to talk about this card because I love it. Now, I'm going to talk about this more on my video, but I'm just going to give you a preview here. It is Doom, all caps with an exclamation point. That is its name. You cannot say Doom without the exclamation point because the card's name is Doom. It is a Warlock Epic card, so you won't see it that often in the arena. And it's 10 mana, and it reads Destroy all minions. Draw a card for each. This should remind you of Twisting Nether, which is 8 mana, Warlock Epic, that says Destroy all minions. So for 2 more mana, you get to, and by the way, Twisting Nether, not a bad card. Like,
Yeah, not a bad card at all. Nope.
Yeah, it doesn't like do that much because you basically blow your whole turn doing it. And if you're behind on the board as Warlock, you're kind of screwed anyway. But it does clear big minions, which is something Warlock can't do. And Doom does the same thing, and you draw more cards without having to sacrifice health. So it's just flat out better than Twisting Nether. And it's not like you're going to Twisting Nether on turn 8 anyway, most likely. So I'm a big fan of this card, and I like the direction most of all, right? It's you increase the Warlock's odds of getting these like big bombs. Warlocks are a little, I don't know, I feel like they're a little predictable to like play against. They're a little predictable to play as. They have their mechanics in the arena, it's all down. And Doom is a very Warlocky card, destroy everything kind of thing, while drawing cards, which is not that great for the Warlock, so it's not overpowered. But it brings a much needed dimension to Warlock that was like a little on the lacking side. Just these like high power mass destruction kind of cards.
Yeah, and I think with this card, you want to see these like huge cards that have implications in the arena, right? Like, in Constructed, you saw it with anything, or sorry, is it anything can happen or everything?
Which one are you talking about? The one that buffs everything?
No, the one that summons all of the Merps.
Oh, that's anything can happen.
Yeah, exactly. And while that was sort of a plague on Constructed, you want cards like that in the arena, right? You want these like big bomb cards and not just a Flame Strike. And this is sort of a bomb card that doesn't require setup, right? Unlike the Paladin card. So this is actually going to be applicable. Like Twisting Nether, you've seen it. And if you've played enough arena, you've been beaten by it a few times. So you know that Doom is going to have implications and it's going to be awesome. Hopefully the animation is just as good as Twisting Nether.
Oh, God, and I can't wait for the animation for Doom.
I am really excited.
The picture, by the way, if you guys don't know, it shows like a bunch of people in like, I guess like really high like waves on a ship. And some are just like standing on the ground. So I'm not really sure what's happening. But there's a giant octopus like old god with a whole bunch of eyes, and lightning is striking its. That could be Cthulhu. That's Cthulhu. Okay, so Cthulhu is having lightning strike its head while it's waving its tentacles around. It looks really freaking awesome. I hope there's some kind of effect.
It's pretty good. Now, look, this card is not going to be top tier or even like cool.
Hey, don't say that yet. We haven't ranked the cards yet. I'm gonna push for this card so hard.
I know you will.
This is gonna end up in the 80s. It won't end up in the 80s. But it'll be good. It'll be good. I'm not letting this card slip to like 50, okay? I'm keeping it way above 50. Let's put it that way.
All right. Sounds good.
Oh, okay. See, Twitch chat has got us. It's Yogg. It is not Cthulhu.
There you go.
Merps, what do you know about the old gods?
Admittedly, nothing. So next card, and this is something that I wanted to squeeze in. I didn't want to just limit it to these 2 cards. I want to talk about Renounced Darkness, which is one of the most unique cards we've ever seen.
Now, I love that they gave it to Forsen to reveal.
I know. It's pretty great. So Renounced Darkness, it is, well, you have yet to click on it. There we go. It is a 2 mana Warlock spell, epic, and it basically replaces your hero power and Warlock class cards with another class's, and the cards cost 1 less. So you do use up a card, you slow down a little bit, and you just turn into another class. You literally renounce darkness. And I'll say right now that this card is pretty bad.
Yes.
It is pretty damn bad. Like, not going to sugarcoat anything, but will it have arena implications? No, it will not. You're gonna
Oh, it'll
see
totally have arena implications.
well,
Not
you're gonna
like
see untrolling.
good ones. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But I'll talk about it this way, and it's the same reason that like sort of these delayed, tricky, cute cards are just not good.
Gang up.
Yeah, exactly. Gang up, and people are saying like, oh man, it has potential late game implications, but that means if you think it has late game implications, and that's the same argument with like gang up or something like that, then this is a dead card at the beginning. You're still spending a card. You're still spending 2 mana. Not only are you replacing warlock cards with another classes, you don't get to pick
Yep.
those cards. You don't get to pick
To,
anything.
to be fair, the cards, even though they're generally worse quality, warlock cards are pretty bad.
They are
So
bad, yes.
you have a
That
good chance of getting like decent cards. And two, no matter how bad a random card is, when you make it cost 1 mana less, it's a pretty good card.
sure, yeah. But lots of times you want to be able to get the synergies and you want to know exactly what you're dealing with, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes you're actually drafting some neutral cards that have some synergy with like with your other cards, right? Like
Hmm.
maybe you have some bombers to go along with your floating watchers, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. But this card, it's going to be fun. I can't wait for the first time that someone else plays it because I'm not going to play. I can't wait for the first time someone else plays against me. I want to see what they get. But other than that, like this
So
is
the correct way to play this is you keep your crappy warlock cards in your hand before you play it, so you can play these cards immediately. Like, and this is very, very important because otherwise, when you draw cards in the late game, the one less mana cost really stops mattering all that much, and you no longer have the Warlock hero power, so you can't just keep drawing infinite amounts of cards anymore. So you have to kind of set up this card to get the max effect too. Like it has its potential problems.
yeah, it definitely does. And I think that's all we want to say about it. I'm like, that's it. It's a pretty bad card. It's going to be ridiculously fun.
All right, okay. Let's move on to a question from the goat. What have you got?
All right. So, question from the goat comes in the aftermath of Two Beers' accomplishment. So, as we know, the 110 challenge really generated interest in the arena and sort of just not just the challenge, but all the arena streamers and just arena game in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that it's over, and I think some streamers are still going after the challenge, but obviously hype has died down. Someone has done it already. What is next for arena, or what would you make that is next for arena?
Okay, well, one, I'm not a Maz, so I can't make these things, and if
Thank
I
you.
do, they won't
Good
be as good.
clarification.
So I'm just waiting for a Maz. But I don't think it's over. I think people will like it. The big thing is over, but I think people will still do it. Just because it's still kind of chasing the record. He kind of set a high score, right? He broke through and then he set a high score, and people will still be trying to beat his high score. So I wouldn't say it's totally over. But in terms of the next thing, I don't know. There's a new expansion coming up. The meta's gonna change. Let's deal with that first. I don't know what people can make. That's kind of the thing, right? Like if you were Blizzard, there's a million things you can do. You just have to put the manpower and the effort and the direction and all that into it, and you can make arena. You can make arena go wherever and do whatever. You can have all these challenges, but in terms of who we are just as people in the community playing the game, and it's incredibly difficult to organize arena tournaments. I don't know. That's why I think the 110 challenge and how it caught on was so brilliant in terms of what Amaz did, because it's so effortless, and the arena players were all kind of like just looking for something to latch onto, and just something that you can compete to do. And Amaz packaged it in a very interesting kind of format that also was very difficult to do, so it would last a long time. And most people thought it couldn't be done. So hey, if TwoBiers did it, I wonder what other people are going to do next. What else we can accomplish?
Yeah, the thing I'm most interested in is after Two Beers accomplished the 110, the Hearthstone devs tweeted out congratulations to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they even had a picture and everything. So they are noticing, right? They're noticing, and they are as much of a fan of the game as they are developers. And I'm hoping that because they saw sort of the hype that this got, the
Mm-hmm.
publicity, and just the general sort of excitement, that they are thinking in their heads like, man, we should really, do something about this, right? Like if we
Hashtag
issued
arena matters. Hashtag make arena great again.
basically, like, what this has shown is that people really like these sort of challenges, these sort of um like Everests to climb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe after seeing the response from the community for this, the developers will make something. Now, I agree. Look, I'm not a Moz and I'm not the developer, so I can't think of something on the spot here. But what I am hoping is that because of this, it has shown that a big challenge like the 110 can really get the excitement going, and the developers would it would be smart for them to actually put something out there,
Mm-hmm.
and they can, like Amaz is constricted because he can't change like the game rules. He can't actually go in and mess with the settings.
Yeah.
But the developers, in a new patch, they can do something. And we're not just talking about like leaderboards or rankings or something, but actually put something out there that we can all strive
Mm-hmm.
towards. And then suddenly people are gunning for this new challenge once again.
Yeah, I think they know. I mean, I've watched Ben Brode stream a bunch since he started streaming. He plays arena like half the time on stream, uh, and so like yeah, there's definitely a more and more inclusion in the arena, and I hope they're setting up for something big. The path this year seems like it's already been charted for constructed, right? Like a huge increase in the constructed tournament payout, a more professional seeming like tournament structure. The focus is definitely there, and that's great and all. But maybe next year, right? Like I know it's only March, but I really don't think any of the things you're talking about is going to happen this year in the arena. Like it's going to be after BlizzCon. And that's okay, but it's also inevitable, right? We keep saying it's inevitable, and then we look around and we're like, well, it's not happening anytime that soon. So I'm with you.
It's
Um,
good to see you again.
the Lightforge is brought to you by the Grinning Goat, and we are the two members of the Grinning Goat, and our Patreon is at patreon.com/Grinning Goat. So thank you to all of our patrons for sponsoring us. And let's move on to Card Good Bad. Card Good Bad. We did Micro Machine last time, and I made a big deal out of actually doing a really good card this time. So I'm going to deliver, and we're going to do 3 really good cards. But I think these are cards. Card Good Bad, by the way, is where we tell you whether a card is good or bad. And we've kind of like screwed up with the theme for like the last few months, and we've been telling you like cards that are like okay or like sometimes good and sometimes bad. But no, these cards are just good. They are always good. It doesn't matter when you draw them. It doesn't matter when you draft them. You see them. You pick them unless you have another truly premium card there. So I think these may be some of the more hidden extremely good cards. We have these all ranked at around 80 on the tier list, which is above pretty much every single neutral common card, besides like Piloted Shredder. And it's ranked that high because it really just determines games. It wins you the game. It's the equivalent of having 2 cards for the price of 1, and you can do it at any time in the game. I'm going to start with Arjun Lands because it's the weakest of the 3 in terms of what you get, right? You'll often play Arjun Lands, and at its base, it's just a 2 mana 2/2 weapon.
Yep.
It's a 2 mana 2/2 weapon. Let's say you don't win the joust. Even if the jousting mechanic is not part of it, it is still a great card. Because one, and this is the great part about weapons, that's not the same as removals. Because people look at these cards and they think, oh, it's like a 2 damage removal that you can use twice. That's good. But no, it's also a drop. If you don't have a 2 mana card to play, you can always just play these cards. You can play an empty Glaivezooka, you can play an empty Arjun Lands, mana, overload considerations, you can play the Stormforge Axe, and you just hold it. You don't have to use it up. They're all in classes in which there aren't all that many weapons to begin with. So you just hang on to it, and it will eventually deal 4 damage on the board. Now,
Yeah.
what is a 2-drop doing? When is a 2-drop that you put on the board ever going to deal 4 damage to something or to multiple things?
Basically, never.
Basically, you need a 2/3 to eat up a 2/2 or an opponent's like 1-drop or something, and then you need it to hit one more thing. That's the only way you can get as much value as these cards. And the damage you take to your face is not that much because you're only hitting small things.
Yeah. So if you look at sort of the calculation that Blizzard has done, and sort of their internal calculation of like all these things, weapons have always been good value, right?
Hmm.
Because if you look at how Blizzard evaluates like the fact that you it's not on the board and also that you're taking face damage and they give you some bonuses for those negatives, right? They give you huge bonuses for these weapons, and it vastly outweighs the negatives. And this is just a trend that we see with all of these weapons. So this is usually why like weapons in the arena are such good value. And we're going to go through sort of why these are so good and why like the two attack is so important. But just generally, that's why if you look at sort of weapons versus something like divine shields that Blizzard has sometimes overrated, right?
Hmm.
You can see why like weapons are really good, kind of no matter the size that they are.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just these are incredible, and I know that they don't look incredible because I definitely have heard people who kind of look at these cards and they're like, oh, okay, they're a good card, but these are not just good cards. They are great. They are game-winning cards. So that's card good bad. Um, let's move on to Druid, which is what the class we're going to be playing after this Lightforge. And it's a nice class. We haven't played it in a while.
Yeah,
How have your Druid runs been going lately?
I think they've been fine. And look, I've been talking about this and reiterating this point whenever we talk about Druid. Druid is a very, very vanilla class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing, like every class has something tricky about them or something special about them. And for Druid, it would be sort of like mana acceleration, right?
Yeah.
Wild growth, innervate, and the aspirant. Now, this is all well and good in constructed, in which every single deck is going to have innervates and every single deck is going to have like wild growths. In arena, those are not premium cards. And what have you got left after that? You have a class that has good beefy minions, good flexibility, like Keeper of the Grove, Druid of the Claw, Robocub. These all are all flexible in their own ways, but also
Choose
like
one.
yeah, yeah, and choose one, Solid Bodies, and they have very honest spells, right? Some of these classes have like cheat
you have
spells, like
a weird way of saying honest.
yeah,
Do you
exactly.
know Swipe? Have you
Well,
met Swipe?
I mean,
Are
people
you
would say that it
acquainted?
is powerful, but I am still going to call it honest because it is just damage. So what do I mean by
Yeah.
honest?
What do you
It,
mean
it
by
is
not
just
honest?
actual numerical damage and not something like polymorph or hex, right? In what,
Oh, okay, okay. I get it. I get it.
right.
Okay. So like
So
Flame Strike is an honest spell.
yeah, it is still an honest spell. Like it is
Hmm.
not something like twisting nether, right?
Right, right.
Um,
Or like Light Bomb.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if it's numerically based, if it's like numbers for numbers,
Hmm.
at least you know what you're getting there. But and with Druid, you're playing by the numbers. It's your minions against their minions. It's your damage spells versus their damage spells or whatnot. So you really have to win on this flexibility. And that's why I think Druid is the best vanilla class in that sense.
Yep. I agree. I like to train with Druid, and it helps center me because it's just a very vanilla class. You play your game, and you don't do anything fancy for the most part, unless you start ramping. But ramps aside, you don't do anything fancy, and then you win or you lose, and you can really determine how good of a player you are. Like assuming you play the class, by like how good of a fundamentals player you are by just looking at your Druid record if you have a large enough sample size. Because for the most part, that's what it does, right? It has a ping, but the ping is like the worst ping in the entire game. You have to take face damage for it. And other than that, it has some beefy minions, some spells, some flexibility, but really not much else. But all the stuff that it does have is guarantees you a curve. You're not going to screw up on the draft too hard. Guarantees you to have good minions, like very tempo, mid-range arena kind of class. And I have been having the problem though, where I think my Druid runs have been going a little subpar lately. Almost every time I get a deck and I'm like, oh, this is going to go like 8 wins, it ends up like a little bit short of that. And these are not great decks, but I've just been traditionally able to get like 8-9 wins even with like crappy Druid decks with like no power, right? It just curves out and you have a couple spells and you're like, all right. But the last like 5 or 6 runs, it's been like a little subpar. And I can't tell if it's just the meta moving like beyond vanilla as more and more good players and good decks are remaining, before the expansion comes out, or your face is really distracting me, or if it's because I'm drafting in a way right now, because I've been drafting a little more value oriented than tempo oriented lately, and maybe Druid you really do have to have the tempo because you are going to lose out later on in the game to other people's like crazier stuff.
See, so here's something I've always thought of, but I'm not sure. Is it easier to draft or harder to draft a good Druid? Because the Druid, if it
It's
is
impossible to draft a good Druid.
right, like if you really do need this like middle of the road Druid, right? Middle of the road is very hard to draft, right?
Yeah.
And you can say that, oh man, a Faith Hunter draft is tough to draft as well. Yeah, you could completely bomb as well, but you kind of know where you're going, right? And if you know where you're going, the roadmap is there. You just try to get there. You try to get your Leper Gnomes and your Glaivezookas and your Unleashes, and you have that like steep, like very high curve at 1, 2, and 3, and then it drops off a cliff. With Druid, if you know that, like, okay, I have to make a well-rounded, flexible yet powerful Druid, you're just like, oh man, I have to juggle so many things at once.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that comes into the equation as well. And with sort of the power level and the skill of the arena right now, that might be holding Druid down a little bit.
Yeah. I just think the value is not there right now when I try to go the value approach, unless you get like an Ancient of Lore or Ancient of War or something, right? But generally, it feels like your path to just like trading and then getting more value later on because you have bigger stuff is a lot more limited with Druid now than it used to be. And you've still got your tempo game going, but you really do have to finish your opponent off at a certain point, unless they're going super aggro, right? It's all relative.
Yep.
But I think for the most part right now, Druid is being forced into a little more of an aggressive, like the normal Druid is being forced into a little more of an aggressive position than I think it used to be.
Yep, definitely. And I think that's Druid. And I'm hoping that we're gonna do well with it this week. But I do think that it is kind of in this tough situation because it is so flexible and because you really need an overall like strong deck.
All right. That's it for this week. Hope you guys check out our my card review video next week, and then Merps will make fun of me for everything I say on the next Lightforge.
Of course.
Until then, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merp. See you guys.
See you guys next week.